Hi, this is Kyle with Outside and Aquatics, bringing the outside into your home. Today, we're going to be going over celestial pearl danio breeding. We're going to be going over the species necessities, pH, temperature, feeding requirements. We're going to be going over a couple different setups that you can set up at home. Ones that are easier, ones that are hands-off, hands-free, ones that you could basically set up in the tank that you have right now. If you guys are interested in all of that, here we go.
Okay, so this is a couple of the options for your celestial pearl danio breeding project. Now, the first iteration that I ever did was something like this. What I did was I took, you could tell, that's some real aquarium stuff right there. That's that duckweed. Alright, so what I did was I took some rocks, just a couple of little rocks in there. I used those for weights, basically, to take some pearl weed or rotala or guppy grass, whatever kind of plants you have laying around in your tanks. For me, I have a lot of different plants, but usually I just use some pearl weed or rotala. You kind of stuff that in there, or if you have some mosses, you could fill the bottom with moss. All right, and you're gonna get that nice and densely planted in there. And then you take this and you can just drop it into one of your tanks. Obviously not just drop it, but you can set it right near one of your tanks. Now what I did is I had it sitting right in this corner here. That's just a guppy, he's just kind of chilling in there. But I had it sitting right in here, and then I had my breeding stock just living in this tank here. And so what they would do when I turn on the lights in the morning is they would start swimming over this, and it would have all the plants growing right out the top of it. They'd swim right over this, and then they'd drop their eggs and the fertilization right into the plant matter. All right? And this really wasn't the main draw in the tank for them because they had such a large space. So when they dropped the eggs in there, they didn't really hang out in there and look to eat the eggs. So I'd get pretty decent collections from this. The only problem is it took me to collect it. So I had to pull this tray out of the water, drain some of the water back into the tank, and then I would take my turkey baster, my handy dandy turkey baster there, and then I would collect the eggs out of here, right? And then I would take the eggs and I would throw them into this, which had a bunch of rocks in there, and also plant material and some floater plants over the top, because with any type of fry you want to give them as much comfortability as possible. So you want to give them cover, plants. Like I say, I say plants all the time because plants are the number one most important thing for fish, and for nano fish and for the types of aquariums I take, plants are the number one thing. So I'm gonna have lots of cover, and then I'd put the eggs in here. And what I did was I had a stand just built into this tank here, which a stand, quote unquote a stand. You know, basically it was just two of these on the bottom of the pond, and I'd set this on top of it just to get the right water level, right in there. And then I used this this sponge filter right here. Has this tube would elevate, so it came up, and I would have the water just filling right into here, and it would overflow out this sponge hole. All right, the water would come out there back into the tank because this sponge hole would sit right above the water level. So this uplift tube right here would fill this box with water, and it would overflow out this hole. Would overflow out that hole, which I made the sponge to fit in there. Overflows out that hole back into the tank, back into the pond. And so what I did was I let the eggs sit in there for a week or so, and eventually you'll see them actually look like little fry. The little fry will kind of cling to the sides, or they'll just kind of roll around on the bottom. And eventually they'll be free swimming in about 2 weeks. I just fed them crushed flake, which was the fluval bug bites. Crushed flake right here. And then what I did is I just pinched that up and just kind of ground it between my fingers and made that super fine powder. You know, just kind of use some of that dusting right there pretty much. You could use that dusting and you could feed them with that dusting once they're free swimming. You don't need to feed them until they're free swimming. Up until then, they're living off of their egg sac. So, from then, I let them grow out for a while until I realized that I only had 2 in here. And there was like 10 at some point. And then I realized that I had cut this sponge probably too small and they had snuck out. It snuck out and they ended up back in here. So I think that they're kind of hiding out and swimming around in there. So eventually I'll find out if I have some celestial pearl danios in there. So I found out that if you're going to cut these holes, you need to make sure this sponge is tight in this hole. You got to realize that their world is so small, that the holes that we think are impenetrable are not for them. So you really need to keep that in mind. I would use a thicker sponge. I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's actually, I mean, you could see light through it, and if you could see light through it, that means something could fit through there. And they're really small, so I feel like they could have actually swum through the sponge. I don't know. That sounds ridiculous, but I don't think it's as ridiculous as it sounds. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a piece of sponge and we're gonna cut this to size to cover our hole right here. And how we do that is basically like this. We cut a square of sponge, and then what you do, you can see is I took scissors and I made a indent all along the edge there. All along the edge. So it's got a rivet or a indentation or whatever that sits into the handle and holds it in place. Kind of hard to do one-handed. Alright, so that sits in right there, and I'll make another one for this side. I'm going to cut out, and I'll cut to when that's done. Okay, sweet. So we got both of our handles plugged up. Now it's time to install this bad boy on our Celestial Pearl Danio tank.
Alright guys, so this is my Celestial Pearl Danio breeding setup. It's pretty simple here. So how this works is we have a filter, just a hang on the back filter from Box Tech. Basically set to the highest flow. I'll set a link in the description to how to get a hold of one of those for yourself. And basically this box just fits perfectly in here. You just kind of push it right in. You have your breeding group living in here. You'll see them swimming around. All right, we got the handles that we plugged up sitting right there. And the tray just fits right on the top there. So the breeding group, they're gonna wake up in the morning, and what they do right when the lights come on, feed them some live baby brine, and they're going to eat that up, and they're going to get to breeding. They're gonna go in the grassy area, and they're gonna lay the eggs. The male and the female will kind of dance together, and they'll kind of curve their bodies together, kind of hugging each other, I guess, and they will drop the eggs, to fertilize the eggs. And the idea for this setup is the water rushing through is going to pull the eggs down, and it'll take it through the grate, pull the eggs, and the eggs will land down here. And what's nice about the setup, right now I kind of disturbed the mulm and everything. The mulm kind of tells you where the eggs are going to land. So when the eggs fall out of the grate, they'll land somewhere in with all the solids that land at the bottom of the tank. They're going to settle and they'll land in that mulm there. And then that's where you're going to look for them with your turkey baster, or if you want to grab them, or you could just let them grow in there. All right, so this is Celestial Pearl Danio egg. You can see its size compared to a dime. These will be floating at the bottom of your tank. They're going to be super hard to see. You'll be able to tell the difference between a fertilized and a non-fertilized egg by the non-fertilized eggs will be cloudy. The fertilized eggs will be translucent. You'll be able to see through them pretty well. At this stage, they are usually rather round. They could be oblong shaped, and when they start to mature, they will start to get stretched out and they will turn into the shape of an actual fry, but they will still be translucent. And at the end of this clip, I will show you guys a clip of a freshly hatched, free swimming fry. When our eggs first hatch, they will feed off of their egg sac for about 3 days. They will need to be fed once they are free swimming and not attached to any surface. I have shrimp and snails in here, which kind of affect the population quantity that you get, but it's not the biggest deal. What I've come to find out is as long as everybody is eating well, as far as like feeding well, they're not going to touch the eggs. Snails aren't really predators, so they don't hunt for live food. They'll try to grab like detritus and different stuff, so leftover food. So as long as you're feeding the tank well, the snails and the shrimp should really keep the eggs free and clear and safe. It'll also keep the tank cleaner overall. Kind of processes the whole life cycle there. So yeah, that's a pretty simple process. Process is set up. And you just kind of set it and forget it. With these guys, you want them to be in their own habitat by themselves. Just let them go, close up the lid, feed them 2-3 times a day, and they will be good to go. They'll go in the grass, drop the eggs, and you'll be able to get some babies. I got a bunch of babies in here. You might see them flying around. Yeah, see them on the ground there? Oh, there's a couple. There's a bunch in there. So yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. You set it, forget it. You do have to be careful though with the size of your adults. I did have one that was too small, smaller than the rest of the group. He was kind of a runt adult, and he was able to slip through the grate. So I pulled him out and put him in the pond, and left the rest of them here, and they should be fine. All right. This is a mystery project that you guys will be able to see later, and I'll explain that. So have a good one, and we'll move on. All right, guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Now that you are Celestial Pearl Danio breeding experts and you have the ability to set up your own breeding system at home, you're just gonna have to do it. Please let me know how that works in the comments, because I gotta know. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can send those in the comments. You could reach out in the email. We have an Instagram, Facebook. I'd love to know. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.